Senator from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank my colleague from Minnesota, the ranking member of the Agriculture Committee, for being here tonight, for helping organize all of us tonight to have this important discussion. I think this evening, as we're standing here, Mr. President, this will mark the longest shutdown in American history. And that is not something that anybody in this chamber should be proud about. I've had the opportunity since I've been here to watch year after year after year after year as these shutdowns have gotten longer and longer. And this is not, this chamber does not belong to the senators that are here, Mr. President. It belongs to the American people. And but sometimes the fight is a really important one. And we are in the fight tonight for health care for the American people. One of the first shutdowns I ever was here to see was one, and to be around for, was one where they were trying to defund the Affordable Care Act. They were trying to take health care away from the American people. This is exactly the opposite of that. The situation we're in tonight is one where, as we meet tonight, people are having to fill out their paperwork for their new insurance premiums. And those premiums are offset by part of the Affordable Care Act that creates tax credits for working people to be able to buy insurance to make it a little bit more affordable. Insurance gets more expensive every single year. And we should do something about that, Mr. President, but we're not even having a debate about that today. All we're doing is having a debate about whether or not President Trump and his colleagues across the aisle here in the Senate want to take away those subsidies from the American people. Mr. President, in my state of Colorado, the result of that is going to be that people's health insurance prices are going to double, at least. In some places, they might triple. In some places, they might go up 400%, is what the governor's office is saying to us. And I do feel like somehow at the end of the day here, President Trump is going to try to find a way to make sure that those prices don't go up the way they otherwise would on the American people, and try to find a way to claim credit for it. I don't care about any credit. I just think the American people need to know that their insurance is not going to skyrocket. But you never know from one day to the next. One day he's worried about the prices in Americans. The next day he could care less. And that's the thing we're here to talk about tonight. Everywhere I go in Colorado, Mr. President, families tell me the same thing. The prices are too high. No matter how much money they try to save during the week, they can't keep up with the cost of groceries. They can't feed their families. Many of these Coloradans, 600,000, rely on a program called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, which is our country's largest and most effective program to feed hungry people and families. Every day, families rely on this program to stretch their food budgets a little further. It allows them to buy things like fruit and vegetables at the farmer's market or the grocery store, pick up milk at the corner store, and for their kids to have a snack when they come home from school. Now the Trump administration is refusing to use the money Congress has appropriated, that Congress passed from here, to fund this vital help for families. And this comes after President Trump and Senate Republicans made the largest cuts in SNAP in the history of the program, all so they could offset their tax cuts for the wealthiest people in America. I've heard from people all over Colorado how mystified they are by that bill, but also the fact that they have no idea how they're going to make ends meet by the end of the week. Older adults in Pueblo County, where nearly 45,000 residents depend on SNAP, now facing health deterioration and malnutrition without the food they need. grandmothers like one in Arvada who can't feed her 3 young grandchildren, doctors who know that their patients are not going to be able to remain healthy if they can't feed their families. All over Colorado, Mr. President, county governments like Chaffee and Pickett and Routt and Summit are responding to the emergency that President Trump has created by giving grocery store gift cards to families who have lost their SNAP benefits. But that's never going to be enough to offset the damage. Mr. President, before I came to the Senate, I served as the superintendent of the Denver Public Schools. And I'm sorry to say this, but in that job, I've seen firsthand what hunger does to a child, what it means for learning, how it undermines not just their future, but the nation's future. We can't build a strong economy or a strong democracy on empty stomachs, Mr. President. Instead of helping families, instead of complying with what the courts have told them they have a constitutional obligation to do, this administration is making choices that raise costs and harm families. These cuts to food and nutrition are the latest moves that this administration has undertaken to make people's lives harder in this country, not easier. They've made it harder for people this week, not easier, to afford groceries in America. President Trump's tariffs, as everybody in this chamber knows, are driving up grocery prices and costs, and the cost to keep our farms running. And as I said at the very outset, they are refusing to extend health care tax credits, the result of which could double or triple the cost of health care for millions of families all across America. What a record of disgrace. Mr. President, last week, 2 different courts said what President Trump is doing with SNAP is illegal. They told him to make the payments to families. But today he said he would ignore the court orders and refuse to fund the program. Later, the White House press secretary had to walk that back, saying that now they intend to fully comply with that court order. I hope that is true, Mr. President. I hope that is true. President Trump has not just the power, but the legal obligation to fund these benefits and to fund SNAP this month. I urge my colleagues in this chamber to stand up for the families who depend on this critical program and demand that President Trump do the right thing and reduce the costs for working people all over this country. I yield the floor.